So we're going into a new series starting today, and then Pastor Josh is going to bring part 2 next week. We are calling For the One. For the One, as we're just going to be unpacking a parable that's in Luke chapter 15. So it's going to be such a great time. I hope you guys get imparted something this morning, and then I know Pastor Josh is going to bring a great word next week as we lead up to Easter in just a few weeks away. We're super excited. But hey, I thought I'd start off this morning kind of being a little bit vulnerable and honest, because, you know, like that's, I don't know, it just feels right to be vulnerable and honest, so you guys could be vulnerable and honest with me. And so I was in high school, and especially after high school in college, was not an A-B student. I was like a C-D student, if I'm being completely honest. I was a C-D student in high school, kind of dropped off a little bit in college. I may or may not have flunked a couple classes in college, but definitely wasn't magna cum laude or anything like that in college either. But here's what I want to know. I want to know who's all my A students in here. High school, college, who are A students up in here? Straight A's. All right. Well, let's see. Who's my B students? Where are my B students at? All right. Where's my C students? All right. I'm not going to make the D and F students raise their hand. Don't worry. Not making the D and F students raise their hand. And so let me tell you, whether you're a straight A student or a C student, D student, if you took a test and you got the test back, the results back, and you got a 99 out of 100, and the teacher says, "Would you like to retake the test?" What are you doing? No way you're retaking the test, right? I know you're like a straight A student, maybe some of you. There is no way right? 99 out of 100 is a win for me. I don't know about you guys, but I'm like, yes, you could basically say that I made 100 by making a 99. You guys are with me on that? Right? Have to. So now, second question, if someone were to loan you $100 and then only paid you back a couple weeks later 99, how many of you guys are worrying about that $1? I was gonna say they had a few people in the 8 o'clock that raised their hand, and I was like, hey, I get it. I know a couple people are like, no, I want my dollar. Where's my dollar at? You owe me $1. But no, most of us, right? We don't care about the $1. I mean, hey, I gave you 99. I gave you 100. You paid me back 99. You know what? I paid for your Coke. It's just what it actually. Cokes are like $3 now for some reason. But I paid for whatever. It's $1. It's not a big deal. Now, let me tell you, if you guys don't know, I'm the student pastor here. And we have 100 plus students that come on Wednesday nights, and I take 100 students. And I say, hey, we're going on a trip. We're going out of town. We're going to go have some fun. And we take 100 students and we go out of town. On our way back, you see me post in our OSC youth parent group. And I say, hey, we left with 100 students. We had a great time. The students went bowling. It was such a fun time. They enjoyed it. Hey, just so you know, we only came back with 99 though. How many of you guys know that's not okay? And then, of course, the first question is that my kid? Is that my student? Because it changes everything when it becomes yours, right? So the reality is that's true. That 99 out of 100 on a test is good. 99 out of 100 when it comes to money is okay. But 99 out of 100 when it comes to people is not. You know, my son, he's 4 years old now, so he's starting to kind of go on field trips and stuff, and so we've got one planned just this week. And of course, he's 4, so we plan to go on the field trips with him. But imagine, I can only imagine for a moment that if they were bringing 100 students on this field trip, and they only came back with 99. And how many of you guys know, if I'm sitting in my recliner at my house and I get a text message and it says, hey, we're only coming back with 99 kids, I'm like, one, I'm definitely losing trust with that school. Absolutely. But I'm also like, oh no, that's terrible. Like, I hope they find that kid. And then that's likely about as far as it goes, right? Like, oh man, we're going to have to pray for them for sure. Back in my pocket. Like, that's the reality for most of it. But how many of you guys know if you get that text message and it says, hey, we lost your kid, you've got very different reaction to that. You're picking up the phone. You're calling people. You're trying to find a search party. You're going to wherever they were last seen. You're trying to figure it out. You're pulling up. You become FBI agents tapping into security cameras. Okay, we saw him here. We saw him, right? Like you do whatever you can to find your child. Like you probably won't even sleep until they're home safe. Because 99 out of 100 for people is not good. But it's exceptionally not good when that one is your one. When it's your one. And that is a lot of what we're kind of getting into with this series because God is all about the one. And in Luke chapter 15, starting in verse 1, Luke 15 is a chapter that's made up of 3 parables. The parables are just stories that have symbolism in them that Jesus used to teach a lesson. And so we're going to be covering in the next 2 weeks this parable that we feel like communicates the heart of God in a lot of ways. So watch what it says in Luke 15, starting in verse 1. It says this, and it says, "And the tax collectors and other notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. This made the Pharisees and teachers of religious law complain that he was associating with such sinful people, eating with them. So Jesus told them this story." Let's stop there. Jesus told them this story. So this is what happens, right? Jesus shows up on the scene. Now, before Jesus shows up on the scene, they have these religious figures. They're called Pharisees. These Pharisees do basically everything that you would think a good Christian or Jewish person should do, right? They read their Bible. They memorize scripture. They pray every day. They are generous. They tithe off of their spice rack. Like it's just what they did. They cared about all of these things that God wanted them to do. The issue is their relationship with God was based off of works and not grace. And so Jesus shows up on the scene and he says, hey, that's cool that you're doing all of that, but you're missing the point. The point is grace. The point is me. The point is that I came as the Messiah. And they weren't even as mad that he was claiming that he was the Messiah as much the fact that someone who claimed to be the Messiah was hanging out with sinners. They're hanging out with tax collectors. People who commit sins and were, had their issues. And so they're like, you can't claim the name of Christ and still hang out with these people. Like, that doesn't work for us. And so in light of all of that, Jesus says, well, let me tell you a story. I want to share a story about that communicates kind of the heart of God. And I think it's a heart that many religious people, and if you're in here and that's you and you're like, man, I just want to work more. I want to do more for God. I want you to pay close attention because that is who this story is too. Watch, he starts off and he says in verse 4, he starts the story, he says, if a man had 100 sheep and one of them gets lost, what will he do? Won't he leave the 99 others in the wilderness and go and search for the one that is lost until he finds it? So he's saying there's this shepherd. He's got 100 sheep, 100 good, healthy sheep. And as they're going somewhere, maybe they're going back to the barn for the night or something, one of the sheep wanders off. And then he poses this question. Watch, go back to verse 4. That's a question mark. So he asks a question, is it good, is it right for the shepherd to leave the 99 that are in his care to go and to find the one? That's what he's asking here. Is it okay? Is it good to want to go and to search for and to seek after the one sheep that was lost? He asks this question and then he answers it. He continues with the story. He says this in verse 5, and when he has found it, he will joyfully carry it home on his shoulders. Verse 6 says, when he arrives, he will call together his friends and neighbors, saying, rejoice with me, because I have found my lost sheep. So the answer is a resounding yes. Yes, that's what a good shepherd does. He leaves the 99 and seeks after the one. Now, I want to note something, that when it talks about the sheep that wandered off, it doesn't say anything specific about that sheep. So does it say, catch this, that it was the most prized sheep? It doesn't say that it was the sheep with the best wool on it. It didn't say that it was the kindest, most loving sheep. It just said one of the sheep. Just a normal sheep that wasn't special, that there wasn't anything that made it stand out, wandered off. And because it wandered off, no matter how unspecial maybe it thought it was or it felt like it was, the shepherd went and found it, searched for it, looked for the sheep, left the 99 to go after the one. And so he continues with the explanation of this parable in verse 7, and he says, in the same way, there is more joy in heaven over one lost sinner who repents and returns to God than over 99 others who are righteous and haven't strayed away. And of course, we kind of picked up on this already, right? Like that this is a symbolic story that represents the fact that the sheep are me and you. The sheep are our neighbors. The sheep are our family members. The sheep is everyone here. We, as God's people, will represent the sheep. And so this story has a lot less to do with sheep and a lot more to do with people. And what it does is it communicates what God's heart is for his people. Which the first thing it communicates is that God sees the lost one. That God sees the lost one. You think about the story of Zacchaeus, right? Jesus is on his way to a house, and there's a crowd that's all around him as he's walking, and Zacchaeus climbs up into a tree. And yes, there's a crowd all around him, but he points out to Zacchaeus and he says, hey, you, one, I'm going to your house, going to dine with you at your house tonight. He points out the one. I'm reminded of the woman with the blood issues, that she had been struggling with blood issues for years and years and years. And it says, the story goes that the crowds pressed around Jesus, that it was so tight. There was so many different people, and he was trying to get somewhere, and the crowds pressed in. And this woman who was struggling with this blood issue for so long, she thought, if I could just touch the hem of his garment, then maybe I'll be healed. And she sneaks her way through the crowd and touches the hem of his garment. And so Jesus, who's around an entire crowd, says, hey, hold on. There's one. There's one here. I'm going to look for the one. I'm going to see the one. Jesus may be in a crowd, but he's looking for the one. Why? Many of you guys have kids in here, right? You can say you have 4 kids. 3 of them are doing awesome and amazing, right? Like you could have your kids are just excelling in life. Maybe they're excelling in school if they're in school, or college if they're in college. Maybe they just have an awesome career and they're just excelling and doing great. Maybe they're married and their marriage is doing awesome. Maybe they're even in church and they're coming to church. Maybe they're even coming to church with you and everything's great. Everything's awesome. But you've got one kid that's going through a tough season. One kid that's going through something hard, something difficult. How many of you guys know you got one kid that's going through a tough season? Guess who's going on a tough season with them? We are. As their parents, you are only as good as your worst kid. It's the reality. Because no matter what kid, no matter how good the three other ones are, you are in the trenches with the one. You're in the trenches with the one. And that's what Jesus is saying here. In Luke 15, verse 7, if you want to go back, if you could go back there, slide people, it says, in the same way, there is more joy in heaven over one lost sinner who repents and returns to God than over 99. So let me tell you what this is not saying. This is not saying God does not rejoice when you read your Bible. This is not saying that God does not rejoice when you spend time with him. This is not saying that God doesn't rejoice when you get up early and fight rain. Sorry, online people. But when you fight rain, God is rejoicing that you're here with us this morning. He is rejoicing in all of that. But what it's saying is that he rejoices more than all of that. There could be 100 people in here, or 99 people in here that are good, that are great, and are going down the right path. And he finds joy in that. But he finds 99 times more joy when one of his lost children is found. 99 plus. He says there's more joy for the one than there is for the 99. And I think that says a lot about God's heart for the one. That's great and awesome that all of his kids are here this morning, but he's got one kid that's not here, and he's thinking about him. He's searching for him. He's looking for them. The second thing is God sees the lost one, and then God also searches for the lost one. God searches for the lost one. It says in the scripture that the shepherd left the 99 and he went on a search for the one. He went on a search for the lost one, trying to figure it out. Let me tell you, one of the best parts of being a student pastor is, and I don't get to do it often because I have some amazing, awesome leaders, and our heart is not for me to be like all of the students' youth pastor, but to have these leaders who are there walking with the individual students day in and day out in their spiritual growth and journey. And I'm going to tell you, just so you guys know, that we have some of the best youth leaders around. I cannot say anything, I can't be more grateful for them because they're just so amazing. But I'm going to tell you, they oftentimes get the benefits of that by getting to lead students to the Lord and walking with these students. So every once in a while, I get a little glimpse of it again, and I'm like, I missed this. This is so awesome. And so specifically in the last 2 weeks, but specifically this week, this Wednesday, there was this young man who came up to me during the altar call, and I could tell. You know how sometimes you could tell, I could tell that this kid had been through some stuff. He had been through a lot of stuff. You could tell that life had kind of beat on him a little bit. And to be honest, there's a lot of students that come on Wednesday nights right now that are like that. So we're just fighting for them, standing in the gap for them. And finally, this one student that I've been seeing so much in, just seeing him fight and battling himself, finally Wednesday night decided to come. He said, I have so much shame. I just have so much guilt. And I just wanted to go away. So I told him, I said, look, man, tonight you could be washed clean. Tonight, no matter what you've done, no matter what guilt or shame you have, Jesus his sacrifice can be sufficient for all of that. And you can walk out of here a new creation according to 2 Corinthians 5:17. And I just remember being praying for him, and as I was speaking and praying those things over him, he just started shaking. I knew this was real, this was honest. And so I told him, I said this, after I prayed with them, I said, go to Tribes, but I'm going to find you after Tribes. Tribes are our small groups. And so tribes happen, and they let out, and so I go and find this guy, and so I'm talking to him, and I'm just trying to help him out, kind of get on this journey. And this is what he told me. He said, I've never had in my entire life someone who was going to pursue me to help me, ever. Never had that. I don't know what that feels like. I don't even know what that's like. And this is what I told him. I said, that's not true. That's not true. You have had a loving, caring, compassionate God, good Father who has continued to pursue you and continued to search for you. Even in your darkest moments, he's pressed into you, and he has actually been the one to lead you to this moment because you were the one, and the Good Shepherd went looking for you, and he's been looking for you. He's been looking for you. And so, yeah, maybe we do wonder sometimes. We wander off. But God comes and he searches for us. He pursues us. He brings us home. He picks us up, puts us on his shoulder, and lovingly brings us home and rejoices that we are back home. So God sees the lost one, and God searches for the lost one. And then also God celebrates the lost one being found. Like I said earlier, Luke chapter 15 talks about how it's three different parables. The parable of the lost sheep, the lost coin, and then the lost son. All three things have been lost. All three. Well, specifically the sheep and the coin, the person is looking, searching to try to find the sheep and the coin. But all three of them have one thing in common. It's how they end. Watch what it says in Luke 15, verse 6. It says, "Rejoice with me because I have found my lost sheep." Luke 15:9 says, "Rejoice with me because I have found my lost coin." Luke 15:23 says, "We must celebrate with a feast, for this son of mine was dead and has now returned to life. He was lost, but now he is found. So let the party begin." It says that no matter what it was, whether it was the sheep, coin, or son, when it was returned home, there was joy to be had. There was a party and celebration to be had. And so that's what God does with the lost ones who are found. He celebrates them. He finds joy in it, and he cannot wait for his lost children to come home to him. God isn't everyone type of God. You know, I'm learning, like, my wife is reading this book, and so she's unpacking it as she's reading this book. And part of this book is he was talking about how Jesus considered himself a rabbi. And because Jesus considered himself a rabbi, like, that was unheard of back then, because rabbis back in the day were very prestigious, like, kind of titles and positions. Like, you had to go through rigorous education and training in order to even become an apprentice to a rabbi. And so, like, it was like, if you were a rabbi's apprentice, it was like you got accepted to, like, Harvard. Like, it was just, like, a very prestigious thing. And so Jesus comes on the scene, and he says, "Hey, I'm a rabbi. You want to apprentice under me?" The door's wide open. It's for everyone. It's not for the specific type of people. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to go anywhere. It is just me and me alone. I am for everyone. I am for everyone, because that everyone represents the people in your life. See that one, the lost one? It represents your spouse. The lost one, it represents your family member. It represents your coworker. It represents your friend, your child. That's what the one represents. And that's why we're all about reaching people and building lives as a church. And I want to tell you this. People make this claim all the time. It's like, OSC is just about numbers. They just care about numbers. Even on the youth side, people tell me that all the time. Like, I just feel like OSC youth, you just care about the numbers too much. And I want to tell you that is absolutely 100% without a doubt true. We care about numbers at OSC unapologetically. Let me tell you why. Because every number is a person, and every person has a soul, and that person is the people in your life that you're believing for, that you're caring for. So why do we have 3 services? So we have a seat for your spouse. So we have a seat for your child, your son, your daughter, your coworker. That way we have a seat for your uncle or your friend that you are believing that's going to come to know Jesus. So when is the church too big? When is OSC done? When there are no more lost people in Jennings and Welsh and Lake Arthur and Hathaway and Gaydon. That's when OSC's done, when there's no more lost people in the area. But until then, we're going to keep growing, and we're going to keep believing, and we're going to keep making sure that there is a space for the one that's in your life. That's what we're all about, reaching people and building lives. So how much is one worth to you? How much is one worth to you? You know, there's this tendency that we feel a lot in churches. I've been a part of them. I've seen it time and time again in all the years that I've been in ministry, that we have a tendency to be so inward focused. Like, it's all about me. It's all about us. It's all about my circle. It's all about the specific people. It's about my life group and my little people, like, and my circle, and this is all I care about, and this is all we're going to care about. You know, I was processing through, I don't know if you guys have heard of the Passion Conference. The Passion Conference is this huge conference. I went to it once, and it was awesome. And I went to it, and it was great. Because what it is it's young adults from all over the country that goes to this one conference every single year. And it's grown tremendously. I mean, when I went, there was a lot of people. But ever since I went, me and my wife, every year, we at least make the best attempt we can to live stream it, because they live stream it for free. So we live stream it every year. And this year in particular, there was this moment that happened. And I remember why I watched it, and it was an amazing moment that happened at Passion. Because let me tell you that this year at the Passion Conference, it's all the way in Atlanta, Georgia, young adults from all over the country drove, flew, did whatever they needed to do to get into this arena. They had over 60,000 young adults at this conference. And if you go to YouTube and you search up Passion Conference 24 moment, that's literally all you have to do. Passion Conference 2024 moment. There's a video that's going to pop up of this moment that happened at Passion Conference. Anyone who's went to the Passion Conference this year knows the moment. It's the moment that kind of marked kind of the conference as a whole, and it was a moment that happened in worship, where literally the worship team, similar to kind of what was happening this morning actually in worship, the worship team just stopped singing and stopped playing. And the 50, 60,000 young adults in this stadium just started singing and worshiping to God. And the tangible, manifested presence of God got so thick in the place. You watch it, you watch the clip, and you're like, oh, I feel God's presence through this video. Like it literally, at one point, the worship leader is just on his face, on the ground, just laying down, just being in the presence of God, like microphones are not even on him anymore. And it was this amazing moment. And if you guys have come to any of our worship nights, you know some of what I'm talking about, right? Like, we have these nights of worship, and there's just these moments that happen that just mark you forever, because you're like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. This is awesome. Like, maybe for the first time, like in that moment, you feel like this peace resonating with you, or you feel, God's love more than ever before. And some of you, as I'm saying this, you know what moment I'm talking about in that worship moment, whether it was a conference or a worship night or something else, that you were just like, oh my goodness, like it was just amazing. I think I could live there for literally ever. I could just live there forever. And as I was just kind of processing through this kind of moment, it looked amazing because I literally had the thought, I was like, I just want to be there. Man, I want to be there. I want to go experience that. The Lord has been working on me in this because this is the truth. Those moments are amazing, and I don't discredit them, but we get to do that for eternity. We get to do that for eternity. You know what we can't do for eternity? Reach lost people. We can't reach lost people for eternity. See, when we die and we go to heaven and we're with Jesus, we get to worship him and we get to be in those moments, and it's going to be awesome. I cannot wait. It's going to be great for eternity. But right now, we need to be doing the things that God has called us to do that we're not going to just be doing for eternity, and that's reaching the lost one. I was listening to Air One the other day, and they said this quote, and it was so good. They said, there's nothing that you can take with you to heaven. You can't take your house to heaven. You can't take even your Bible to heaven. You can't take your work to heaven. You can't take your car to heaven. There's one thing that you can take to heaven, though, and it's the people in your life. That's the one thing you can take with you to heaven is people. So what would it look like if we decided as a church that we are going to take as many people with us to heaven as we could? And we pursued those things. Jesus, when he called the disciples and he started his journey with discipling them, or, kind of their apprenticeship under him, he kind of sandwiched his time with them with the same thing, because he said, you guys know this, he goes to the disciples and he says, come and follow me and I will make you a fisher of men. I'll make you fisher of men. And then right before he leaves, one of the last things he tells them, he says, go therefore and make disciples. Both of which says, go, I'm going to train you, I'm going to teach you to go to people. And let me tell you something about fishing. I don't know much about fishing, but I've fished my whole life. Many of us are fishermen in here, right? Like, we fish a lot. We love to fish here in Southwest Louisiana. But let me tell you something. I've learned this over the years, that you don't have to catch anything to say you went fishing, right? So you go fishing. If you don't catch anything, did you still go fishing? Absolutely. Let me tell you what this tells me. Fishing has a lot less to do with what you catch and a lot more to do with what you search for. And so when we're becoming fishers of men and we are called by God to be fishers of men, it's not about just trying to catch a bunch of things, because the act of fishing is actually just a pursuit of the fish. Saying, all right, I'm going to get the right reel. I'm going to get the right bait. I'm going to get all the right stuff so I can cast it, find the right place, because the pursuit or the search for the fish is what fishing is. And so God, when Jesus called the disciples, he said, I'm going to make you fishers of men. He's saying here, I'm going to make you people who are going to be searching and sweeping and trying to find the fish, the one that I am called you to reach. It's all about searching and seeking. So when we give our lives to Jesus, I want you to know that found people find people. That when you become found, you go and find. So when we give our lives to Jesus, what we do is we join a global search party for the one. We join in on a search party. And I want to say that my worst day as a follower of Jesus is better than the best day that a person that has Jesus, that is without Jesus. So who's your one? Your one, we have it on the screen. Your one is the person that is near you but far from God, that you can intentionally and prayerfully invest in and pursue. The one person that is near you but far from God, that you can intentionally and prayerfully invest in and pursue. So this is your friend, your coworker, your family member, your gym partner, the person who in your life, and I think you can, even as I define that, you can start thinking through that, like, Who is the person that is close to me and far from God? And I want you to know that that is your one, because what happens is proximity causes responsibility. Proximity produces responsibility. The closer you are to people, the more compassion you have for them, the more love you have for them, and it increases the responsibility you have for them. Hence why it takes action to go and find the one, when it's your child, as opposed to someone else's. And Pastor Josh is going to be unpacking that all next week, but it's all about responsibility. I'm going to tell you that when you, as a Christian, you thirsted for the living water of God, like Jesus talks about with the woman at the well, you thirst for the living water, and then you find the living water. Our goal is not to keep the living water to ourselves, but to bring it and share it with anyone and everyone that is thirsty. I love how Charles Spurgeon puts it. He puts it this way. He says, evangelism is one beggar telling another beggar where to get bread. It's one beggar telling another beggar where to get bread. You're hungry? Let me show you where to get food. Man, why do we have such a tendency to say, oh, like, I got this bread, this is awesome, sweet, I'm fed now, I'm good. Oh, you're starving over there? Oh, man, that sucks. It's terrible. You know, I didn't share this with the first service, but I just thought about it. One of the illustrations that I did, I think I got some time to share this. Oh, man, I'm probably going to get in trouble. It'll be all right. So one of the illustrations that I did at youth one time, this is one of those illustrations that I literally am still known for. Like, people are still like, don't do that again, Dustin. That was a bad idea. When one of my leaders just said, yep, from the back. So this is what happened. And so I had this bowl, and it had a bunch of goldfish in it. And I said, see, these people represent the people in your life. The people, like, are you. It represents people in your life that are just, like, are breathing and have life, right? Everything that water bowl contains, it has everything that fish needs to stay alive. It has, I created an environment to where the goldfish that is in the fish bowl can stay alive. And then I said, what happens if I take it out? And I took out a fish. What happens when I take the fish out of the environment that's keeping it alive? And then I said, what happens? And then I threw the fish. I think that's the line that probably got crossed in that moment. Because the students were like, I just saw a fish fly and I didn't know what to think. I threw the fish. I said, see, our job as Christians, we're supposed to run to the fish and get them back to the environment that they could live and that they could thrive in. I'll tell you what, they never forgot that illustration, that's for sure. They never forgot. I don't even know where I'm at anymore. Where are we at? And so it's all about reaching and saving the lost. I'll never forget it's all about finding the one. Finding the one that's in your life. When I was in 2010, I gave my life to the Lord, right? Many of you guys know my story. This was about March, April-ish. So I'm officially kind of 14 years as a Christian. And then in the summer, I felt called to ministry. Now, let me tell you something about my journey when I felt called to ministry is I was already accepted at UL to go to college. Like, I already had an apartment at UL. Like I said earlier, I had not the best grades, but I had tops. And so I had scholarships ready for me to go to college. And then I go to youth camp, and I feel God is calling me to go to, pursue ministry. And then I come home and I tell my parents, I say, hey, Mom, Dad, I just don't know if I'm going to go to college because I feel like I want to pursue ministry. And my parents were like, no, you're going to college. And so just trying to, I remember being in that season, just trying to figure out, okay, what is God's plan for me? What is God's plan for my life? I just feel called to ministry, but my parents are saying I need to do this. I'm set up for this. And I just remember meeting. I had several meetings with Pastor Josh and Pastor Zach just to try to figure out what the right thing to do was. And we decided the right thing to do was for me to go to college. And so I did. I went to UL. And I remember, like, for the first week there, I was like, oh, I feel so disobedient. Like, I'm not supposed to be here. Why am I even here? Like, this isn't good. Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, throwing a pity party for myself. And then I remember after the first week, I was like, man, I need to change my perspective. It probably wasn't me that said that. It was probably, like, Pastor Josh that told that to me. But I remember thinking, I need to change my perspective. And so this is what I did, is every morning, I would wake up before I'd go to school, and I'd pray this. I said, God, I pray that you set divine appointments for me today. And I have a day, I have my day planned. I got my classes I got to go to, but interrupt whatever you need to set me up with a divine appointment with someone that you want to reach. And as I just prayed that, I remember thinking doors just kind of started opening. Like, we're having like group activities in class, and people are like, man, I want to know more about Jesus. And I'm like, well, that's really easy. Sweet. Let me talk to you about Jesus. And that was great and awesome. But also in that season, I was working at Mr. Gaddy's here in town. That's what I was doing for money. And I had a manager, and let me tell you about this manager, is he had a very clear, obvious substance abuse issue. The guy was lost as a goose, and he believed some very crazy, strange stuff. But primarily he believed that he was Buddhist. He claimed to be Buddhist. And so I learned so much about Buddhism and what it is and all that kind of stuff in that season. And I remember I said, you know what? What would it look like if I was intentional with this guy? And let me tell you about this guy. Like, he would get to Gaddy's, and he would set up a little shrine to Buddha. He was the manager, so he could do that. He'd set up a little shrine to Buddha in the back of the kitchen, like by the dishwasher. And I'll tell you, I remember sitting next to his little Buddha shrine, just talking to him, saying, man, tell me about what you believe. Like I said, he believes some crazy stuff, like you can achieve Christ consciousness and become Christ. It was crazy. And I just remember every night, like we worked together, I would just talk to him a little bit more about Jesus. A little bit more. And it was really just a reciprocated thing. Like, he would ask questions, I would answer them. I would ask questions about Buddhism, and man, he was just so bad off on drugs and substance abuse that I remember finally there was one moment where he said, hold on, that's something I've never thought of before. That's different. And then we just began to unpack that. And I don't remember what it was, to be honest, but definitely had something to do with God's love. I think that he is the only God that came to humanity to make a way. Every other religion has to make a way themselves. He's like, hold on, that's resonating with me. So fast forward a couple weeks, I'm just helping him. He came to church one time, and then I'll never forget, he said this. He said, hey, so Dustin, I just want you to let you know I'm quitting because I'm moving to Florida. I really need to just change my life. This and that. I'm moving to Florida. And he said, but I want to meet with you for lunch. Okay. Yeah, I'll meet with you for lunch. Yeah, I want to meet with you for lunch before I leave. So I'll never forget sitting at McDonald's. I don't know why we chose McDonald's, but we're at McDonald's. And he said, I wanted to tell you this before I left. I think I'm ready to try this Jesus thing. I'm ready to give my life to Jesus. And it was at McDonald's here in town, across the table from one another, that I led my first person to the Lord. And it was the most beautiful thing. Months and months of just going after him and realizing that he was the one. He was the one. So I want to speak to the 99 here. It's time to go after the one. It's time to find and figure out who the one is. And you need to ask God, who is my one? Who's my one? Who's the person in my life that God has placed close to me but is far from him? Who is the person that God is calling me to reach? Who's the lost, broken person who's going through such pain and suffering? I love this, that Teresa of Avila, she said this. She said, Christ has no body but yours. So go out and be Christ's body to the world. He doesn't have any physical body, but the physical body that you have. So what would it look like if we went, even if it was just one? Because remember, he celebrates for the one. More than 99 sitting in his church service. He celebrates one. Who's the one? Who is God calling you to go after for the one? And then I want to speak to the one in here. Maybe you're in here and you showed up, and maybe you're at the end of yourself. Maybe you're in here and you're the one. You've wandered off. You're the sheep that hasn't been in life. Maybe you're the fish that hasn't been in the water, and you feel like you're suffocating because you're not in the environment that you should be in. And maybe this morning, and I want you to know this, like I said, God sees, and God searches, and God celebrates the lost. And if you're one of the one in here, I want you to know that God sees you. He sees you where you are. He knows what you've gone through. He knows what you've done. And he sees you, but he's still searching for you. The fact that you're here this morning or watching online, it means he is searching for you. I'll never forget growing up, right? I gave my life to Jesus as a senior in high school, but there was a moment in 8th grade. I'd switched from private school to public school, and I remember I had made friends with a bunch of bad influences. And there was this moment, it was a Friday, that I had decided that I was going to go to a party with them, and I was going to do drugs. I was going to try drugs for the first time. And maybe it was because I have an older brother that has struggled with substance abuse for his entire life. But I think it's deeper than that there was something in me that in that moment that said, no, I don't want to go there. I don't think I want to go down that path. I don't want to do that, and I intentionally didn't go to that party. And I want to tell you, I can stand here today and say that was God seeing me and searching for me, just as maybe you're here and you know that he's seeing you and he's been searching for you for years. And maybe right now in this moment, it's time to be found. And so I'm going to do something different this morning. Maybe you're in here and you are the one, and you're saying, I'm ready to be found. I want the good shepherd to throw me on his shoulders and take me home. I am ready to go home. I'm ready to go in the water. I'm ready for this. This is what I want you to do. I don't want you to raise your hand. Usually bow your heads and have everyone, we're not doing that. And then I'm not going to make you stand up either. This is what I want you to do. There is a room on your way out called the Next Steps room. I want you, don't leave here without swinging by the Next Steps room and telling one of them that you are ready to take that next step. I'm telling you, we'll have someone pray for you. One of our pastors will be around there just to help you and to minister to you. Don't leave here without being found this morning. So let's pray. God, we thank you and we praise you. We praise you for all the ones, because everyone in here at one point was the one. And you came to us, and you searched for us, and you found us. You found us, and we found home, and we found peace, and we found life in you, God. So I pray that you instill in us a heart to go and take people where we've gone. God, give us a name. Give us a person. Give us our one that we are called to go after this week and maybe in the next few weeks or maybe even months. God, give us the one that we're called to be your hands and feet to serve, to love, to care for, and then of course to tell them all about you. And I pray for the one as well, God. We thank you that you're saving them in a lot of ways from themselves, from the pains of this world. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.